This tutorial will be a demonstration of effects in Adobe Audition. If you want to follow along, feel free, open up the 0601 Previewing Effects multi-track session in the Working Files multi-track session subfolder right there. All right, what are effects? Effects are like little mini programs that you can apply to clips or to tracks in a multi-track session that cause the audio to sound different. It might be more trebly or more bassy or have a little bit of reverb like in a cathedral or something, or echo like you're shouting across a canyon, stuff like that. Those are effects. You find effects inside, oddly enough, the effects menu. And here are the categories of effects from amplitude and compression down to time and pitch. And each one of these categories has some number of effects in it. Now, there's some other effects here as well inside the effects menu. These are effects that you click on them and they just happen basically. And then here's a couple other categories, VST and VST3, that are empty because you have to put stuff in there. You can go online and find what are called VST plugins and install them in Audition, and they will appear here. And I'll talk about VST at the end of this little tutorial. So let's just take a look at some effects. Some are complex, some are simple. We'll take a look at a simple one like this guy called Vocal Enhancer. Here your options are pretty straightforward. Is it a female vocalist or a male vocalist? Difficult to figure that one out. Or we can move on to things that are a little more complex, like under amplitude and compression. Go to the multi-band compressor and check out this little guy. If I were to play this, you can see what's going on there. And I have the preset set to walkie-talkie here. I'm going to change some of these presets to other presets, and you get a chance to see how this effect will work.
And around, no matter where I looked, you couldn't be found. I put in a lot of energy and time, but you're just too hard.
Things like that. And as you change those presets, the settings here change as well. And then they give you kind of a starting point if you want to change them further. So this is a more complex effect that works inside Audition, and almost every effect has some number of presets that the folks at Audition just set up and then gave them a name that they thought represented what that preset sounded like. Okay, so when you have an effect, how do you apply it? Let me show you that. You can apply it to an entire clip or to part of a clip right here inside the waveform view of the editor panel. You can also apply effects not only to the waveform view, but to the spectral frequency display view and the spectral pitch view, but typically you work inside the waveform view. And when you apply an effect here, you are applying it directly to the file. This is called destructive editing. You're going to change the file, and so you need to be careful if you do change it that you save it under a new name, or just be aware if you just save it under the original name, you're going to replace the original clip. Let me show you how to do that just briefly. I'm going to go over this in more detail in the other upcoming tutorials, but for example, you go to Effects and you go to, let's say, Delay and Echo and pick Analog Delay, and you can preview it, which is nice.
To find.
You get this kind of delay there, and if you like it, then you click Apply, and then it'll apply to the entire clip. If you want to apply it to just a part of the clip, you can select that part and apply it to that part, and the rest of the clip will not be affected. I'll close out of here. We'll just bypass that process now. If you want to apply an effect sort of above the clip, not directly to the clip, but apply it to sort of try it out and see if it's working, and maybe you want to make some adjustments later, you use what's called the effects rack. Now the effects rack is over here to the left. The effects rack is the same whether you're working with the waveform view or the spectral frequency display or the spectral pitch display. This little effects rack sits over here waiting for you to add effects to it. You can have up to 16 effects applied to any single clip. I have to use the word apply carefully. You're not really applying it to the clip. You're sort of layering it above the clip. So for example, I'll just open up this little slot here. We'll pick that delay and echo guy again. Now it's residing in that slot. We can try it out. Let's see what it sounds like again. And we'll try a different effect. This time we'll try drain pipe.
Not at home.
Cool. So then if you just close this guy, you have now layered it basically above this clip. You've not applied it to the clip itself, but it will play. It'll have its effect when you play this clip.
Please leave a message when you hear the...
And you can add more effects here as well, and then you can rearrange them if you want. You can turn them on and off. Try it with it on now.
The personal touch was what I really had in mind.
Off. You can turn them on and off, however you want to sort of play with them to see if they work. Let's say you decide that, I don't really like that particular version. I can always just double click on it and try a different preset like Canyon Echoes instead. I'll close this guy down, and now this guy's been changed.
But you're just too hot.
So you can just, change them and keep on going until you find something you like. There's one little button down here at the bottom that says apply. So at some point, you'll need to apply it to this clip if you're going to want to use it elsewhere. So there is the option to apply it down there. But until you click apply, it's just sort of hovering above it if you want to look at it that way. Let's switch over to the multi-track session. Over there, things are a little different. Now remember, back in the waveform, we've got analog delay applied to the lead vocal track. But if I go over to the multi-track session, here's the lead vocal clip, but no, that effect is not there. It's not on the clip effect side of thing or the track effect side of thing. It's independent of what's going on inside the multi-track session. Whatever I did over there will not play here.
You couldn't be
I'll solo her.
found.
No effect whatsoever has been applied to her here. If I were to go back to the waveform and click on that word apply, then it would be in the file. When I go back to multitrack, I would hear it, but right now they're two independent things. So I can do the same process here inside the effects rack for the multi-track session. I can apply an effect like an overlay to the clip, any clip inside a track. Or let's say I've got 40 clips in a track here. I can apply an effect to the entire track, and it'll apply to all the clips in that track. Now, as I showed you before, there are presets available in each individual effect, but in the effects racks, the one for multi-track session and the one for the waveform editor, there are presets as well. These work differently though. I've got track effects turned on now. I'm going to click the drop-down list. These guys are presets that incorporate multiple effects with properties within those effects changed to create a certain kind of sound. So let's just say we have a faraway source here. If I do that, it puts 3 effects here and pops up this little warning. It says one of these effects is processor intensive. Okay, well, thank you for the warning. That's the red one. Whenever you see a red one, that means that this guy is going to push your processor, and you might want to do what's called pre-rendering, which is a little button down here. So we've applied these 3 effects to this track, and let's see what that sounds like.
I put in a lot of energy and time, but you just.
There you go. So those 3 effects lead to that kind of faraway source feeling that some Adobe engineer worked out for this guy. So you can see that you can apply effects here. There is no apply button down here. The multi-track session is a non-destructive editing environment. Nothing you do here will change an original clip. That's important to know. The original files are not touched on whatever you do inside the multi-track session. So back in the waveform editor, where you might be working in the waveform or the spectral frequency or the spectral pitch display, all those guys are destructive. So you need to be aware that you're changing the file. Here in the multi-track session, it's non-destructive. It's just kind of layering it on top. One more place where you can apply effects is the mixer. And the mixer has a little area that says effects. You can see the button right there, but you can't see what effects are added to it because of the screen resolution we're working on here in Infinite Skills to keep our fonts looking sharp and large. So I'm going to expand the view of it by pressing the tilde key as I hover over this panel, the tilde key in the upper left-hand corner, and then that focuses only on that one panel. Now you can see those effects that we applied to that one track. They show up here in the mixer as well, and you can also apply effects within the mixer the same way. So I was trying to say there are like 6 different ways to apply effects. The mixer is a location where the process is basically the same as it would be if you were over on the waveform side of things. The difference is that you're doing it here within the track. Well, you can do it within the track and the multi-track session as well. Let me press the tilde key to pop out of this full screen view. Switch back to the multi-track session. And you see a little button here that says FX. If you click on that, the effects show up here in each track looking very much like they do over here. If I click back to this one, which is the default inputs and outputs, you don't see them there, but they are tucked away there if you press on the effects button like so. Okay, I told you I wanted to talk about VST plugins before we leave this tutorial. VST stands for Virtual Studio Technology, created by a German company. The German pronunciation will be Steinberg. Pardon my German there. Let me switch over to the Steinberg website. This is a plugin zone, they call it, inside the Steinberg website, and they present companies here that create plugins for a fee, or you have to pay for these guys. But if you were to do a web search on VST plugins, you'll find hundreds of free VST plugins. And what's really cool about these guys is that all of them will work inside Audition. Audition is VST compatible. And so these guys have these interfaces that look for all the world like hardware, which they're intended to look like hardware, but in fact these guys run as an interface inside Audition, and then you can control these guys as if they were hardware sliders or things like that. And many of these plugins will create sounds, like they'll be synthesizers, or they have really dramatic effects that go way beyond what you find inside Audition. So I really suggest that you go check out VST plugins. The reason there was a VST and a VST3, VST3 is the latest plugin technology, the latest Virtual Studio technology from Steinberg. So not many plugins will be VST3 compatible, but it's good to know that Audition is compatible with VST3 in case you find VST3 plugins out there, as well as the sort of standard VST plugins. So that is just a basic overview of the effects inside Adobe Audition. Coming up in some other tutorials, we'll look at the specific ways you apply effects and some specific effect categories.